I'm going to start us off, and then Michelle and I are going to go back and forth. Just a few key things. First of all, if you think of a question and if Alyssa gets the chat going, we really want this to be interactive. So please make sure that if that typing capability comes up, that you use that, and it'll just be a chat box. If not, our format is to discuss the definitions. Michelle's going to show a video, and I may throw one in as well. Then from there, Michelle's going to talk about the history of the different categories themselves, the different genres, because that's going to help connect the dots with the definitions. And then from there, we're going to go to the Q&A format. So if you need to, just hold your question to the end or chat, type that in. If it's really important, you are welcome to interrupt us. Sometimes that's hard though. And most of you are in mute mode, which is wonderful, but just go ahead and come off of mute, raise your hand or do something, and I'm sure that we'll see you. So what I thought we would do is I'm going to read a little bit of some definitions according to the ISDTA on the different genres. And then there's a couple key words that Michelle has really highlighted. I'm going to let her talk about that and then show a video. We're going to keep this very natural and very fluid. So Michelle, just interrupt me at any time and we will make this a tag team. So we're going to start off with the definition of jazz. And there's a couple of key phrases that's in the ISDTA definitions that we feel is really important for y'all to hone in on. And the first one is stylized rhythmic dance movements. That jazz is a combination of that. So again, I want you to think about the word stylized and rhythmic. So you want to think about that. And then in a little bit, when Michelle talks about the history of dance, that's really going to jump off the page for you whenever you reread it and look at the definition again. And then it also says in that same sentence, you're going to, the combinations which interpret and emphasize, and here's the key, up-tempo music. Up-tempo music. That's very important that you also hear that. And then there's a great sentence about it including formation changes, group work, leaps, and turns. That's wonderful for almost any particular style. But then there are some key concepts, and Michelle's going to hone in on one of the words in particular. We're also looking at proper technique, extension, big word here, control, body placement, and team uniformity. So that's pretty much the ISDTA definition. I'm going to throw it over to Michelle to add some of her insights on a couple of those words.
That really popped out to me was control, and not to suggest that other dance forms should not be under control. I mean, we expect that your body placement is understood for all team members. But I think that an important aspect of control in jazz is that as students are learning to move in a way that is sharp or strong, and we see it in palm too quite a bit, that the moves get thrown away. They're not finished. They're just bam, 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 and kind of just going from one move to the next. So control aspect is important in jazz because you are showing that the movement is stylized. It has maybe less of a precise placement possibly than palm. There might be a smooth action in the movement that is being emulated by the body, or a rhythm that changes within, but the moves should not be thrown away or so thrashy that they become misunderstood in what their intentions were. The customary skills, one of the questions that we had asked, I'm kind of just going to meld those into the definitions, was what skills specifically would you see in jazz or contemporary or lyrical, for example? And I don't think that any person could ever really say, you only see this skill in this style of dance. And I'm certainly not going to do that. And I know ISDTA really can't put a label on that necessarily, because everything just evolved from jazz anyway. These styles did. So I think you're going to see a crossover of some things, But what I was thinking of maybe saying is what might be more customary to see in each of those different genres as we hit them. So it might be more customary in jazz to see things done in parallel position. So a preparation would be in parallel to do a parallel pirouette. You might even have a more obvious preparation in jazz. Sometimes it seems to be more planned and more composed or more choreographed versus coming just out of something suddenly that was unexpected or a different level, for example. So also you might see fouette turns a la seconde because they're a little bit more of a power move. So you might see more power jumps like switch leaps or really strong leaps in second that look very traditional lines, turns in the air, things that take air, things that are explosive, I think might be a good word to think of. So parallel, explosive, power, something strong. Conversely, I have a video or two to show you that is an example of a very traditional form of jazz. And to me, it's a little bit more, I guess really the true word is traditional, because it's going to be along the lines of what I even learned when I was first learning jazz. So a lot of the transitions are glissades or jazz runs, and some of the transitions are triplets. And there's a lot of isolation in the upper body that is a little bit more fluid, but it doesn't make it not jazz. It just is a more traditional style of it. So I want to show that to you now because I have a couple other things I want to show you that also are jazz. And so what we'll do is just take I don't want to sit here and watch videos all night. I just want to show you about 40 seconds or so of a few examples, and then we can have a little dialogue later if we need to. And this is a real traditional style of jazz. You should be seeing it pretty soon. And I already had it loaded, and now it's spinning and spinning. And I was really prepared, and I already had it loaded.
There it goes.
Parallel prep, parallel turn. Hip and shoulder isolations, step ball change, traditional movements. Plie, grounded. Lots of like jumping into parallel forced arch. Some floor work, Fatma tilt. Back attitude. Little pony. So there's some group work and some unison work, and I think that comes into play with actual score sheet stuff, which I'm not really here to discuss because I am not versed in that. But that's the idea of the style. And so looking at the next style, which is very similar and yet different, I want to, how can I can't, I got people in my face here. Okay, there we go. Oh dear, someone has a beagle or something.
That would actually be mine at the cat next door. I'm going to mute.
Oh, okay. So this is the one I was referring to, the transitions. Movement, a lot of it's the same kind of movement, but the transitions are not jazz walk power, hit, hit, bam. It's a little bit more like triplets, jazz runs, glissade. Lots of straight arms on this. So like hit, hit, bam, prep. That was a little more fluid moment there, but this is definitely early jazz style. Like it's an early traditional style. So just because it's not arms locked and pow, pow, hit doesn't make it not jazz.
Right.
But the clean, long, straight lines and the energy behind it, the quality of movement, not necessarily even the tempo, makes it jazz. But this is definitely a higher tempo than you would find in Lyrical, although some of these kinds of moves could be adapted to a different piece of music, maybe use a different costume that's more fluid, a dress, and turn a few things out and slow it down, and it might be more of a Lyrical approach. There's your parallel turn and your parallel prep, and even coming out of the turn, like a harder go-bam going into something else. Parallel, lots of parallel turns on forced arch, parallel jumping saute, parallel pop de releve, turns a la seconde, and then some traditional jazz floor work as well that you would likely see in a jazz class. And then I do have one more video of jazz specifically. I can't pull it up unless I stop sharing. And it is.
You're doing a great job with the technology.
Thanks. This is my first time to learn how to share on a call. And so it's just a whole new experience. Do you see my white screen?
Not yet.
Do you see a black screen?
I see the gallery of everyone.
Do you see a video?
Not yet. Retry your share.
Mm-hmm. I can't even find me. There. Oh, it says I'm not in the meeting anymore.
But I can still see you, so that's good.
Okay. It says I'm not in the meeting.
But I can hear you and see you, so that's good.
Okay. Well, what you could do then is we could go ahead and
We'll
talk
just
about
Lyrical.
Of Lyrical.
Sure, I'll go right into Lyrical, and then if we get a chance to go back to it, we will. So remember what we talked about in jazz. Now, Lyrical, when you go to the ISDTA definition, is melodic dance movements. But here's the thing. I want you to think of the why, and this is Mary's little term of the why. Expressing an emotion, that's in your definition. Expressing an emotion, a story, or simply the lyrics of the piece. So for me, as a judge, I think most of us are sitting there and thinking, why? Why that piece? What emotion are you trying to show me? How are you telling me that story? So that's what the lyrical is in your definition for sure. And then also here, the next sentence, the word fluid really sticks out. It says more emphasis is on expressive and lyrical style with fluid movements based in ballet. So if you go back and you think about jazz, it definitely says rhythmic dance movements. It also said the word up-tempo. And then in lyrical, it's the why. It's expressing an emotion, a story, or simply the lyrics of the piece, and that it is fluid. So I'm going to go ahead and Michelle, if you're ready, talk a little bit about the word fluid. That was a word that really stood out to you.
It did, because a lot of times when I'm judging Lyrical specifically, and even when my own students do it, they are doing something very soft and they become just weak and they don't finish anything. And right. I feel like that word, or even just when they hear the music, it's slower, so they just start moving more softly and they think they're being gentle. And they're not finishing. They're not being full and rich. And so we're just trying to say fluid does not mean soft or weak. It should still be rich and full. And I actually think it's harder to be in control moving slowly than it is to move fast. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to sharing my screen and we'll watch a lyrical video that does utilize some of these concepts.
And I'm sure Michelle's, oh, there it goes. Good, I was going to fill in.
Okay, thank you. Go team.
You can definitely see the difference in the dynamics of how it eases from one form to the other.
And that ballet influence with attitude turns, turned out preparation, turned out pirouette, boite to attitude derriere. See how they are full and rich and complete in some of their body oscillations, or that full body contraction with the arms coming in over to ano and roundedness. But then there is that straight line moment as well, a little hyperextension in the arabesque line. So that's both the influence of the ballet and how it did evolve from jazz. Turned out coup de pied pirouette. Okay.
Great.
And then the other one is, and let me see. My little, okay, this is what I don't understand is because nope, don't want to watch that. My drop down from the Zoom is covering my Tabaroonie that I'm trying to click on up here.
Maybe hit escape and that'll take you out of full screen. See if that helps. Nope.
Got it. Yes, and this is actually lyrical, but it does utilize the skirt slightly. Choreographically, I don't know at ISDTA, that might cross over to something else. But instead of looking at how they're using their skirt, look at the quality of their movement and the influence of ballet and how it has evolved from jazz. And the musicality is clear. I'm so confused, right on the lyric. Loud, clear, right on the lyric. Thinking of the lyric as the dynamic drive that a normal instrumentation would have. So you're not acting out the lyrics. It's not like show choir. It's just following the lyric as it is musical. Inflections.
So you're very specific as to the piece and to the song that you chose and what you're trying to convey.
Lots of that swing and heavy drop that is also a little bit stolen from modern dance. It allows you to be a little bit heavier, but stay fluid. All right. And I did find that other jazz. I was able to pop it up. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So this is going to be more, also very articulated with the music, but a lot more skill heavy and a lot more power moves. The lift. Those surprise moments. Bam. Straight arms. But everything coming from the back too. So it's really in control, even though it's bam, hit, it's placed. Power jump, power jump. Parallel on de dan turn, a la Saccone, jumping to forced arch. There's some of the very same hip roll, step touch that the other team actually did. They just did it a little bit different style and tempo. So I'm glad that we checked back to that after seeing those two lyricals, because I think it just made it more obvious. Oh, wow, yes, that is so different. So even though those other two jazz styles were a little bit more traditional and soft in essence. Clearly, there is a difference between the jazz and the lyrical components.
So now we're going to discuss the contemporary. So with contemporary, I want you to really think about what that word means before we even hit what the ISDTA definition is. The meaning of the word alone really gives you the clue. Contemporary means modern. It means current. So in the definition with ISDTA, it incorporates movements based in ballet, modern, and jazz, as well as any other expressive movement, but it can express an emotion or story. But here's the thing. It incorporates both fluid and staccato movement, and it relies on technique. But here's the key, everybody. Unpredictable changes in rhythm, unpredictable changes in speed, unpredictable changes in direction. So with the word contemporary, also think of the word fresh. Think of the word new. And what we're seeing now, because it's new and it's fresh and it's modern and it's current, is a lot of shapes. And so now I'm going to toss the ball over to Michelle to talk a little bit about some of the customary skills or customary things to see in contemporary.
All right, so those customary turns that we mentioned while we were watching the lyrical was preparation and turnout, skills and turnout, ballet influenced turns and leaps, and also posturing. And then for contemporary, you want to think of, I suppose some purists might say, well, when you do contemporary, you don't take air, or you don't do pirouettes, or you don't turn. And I think that could be partly true, but I think it's how are you doing it? So we go back to not what those skills are per genre, it's how they are being done. So in contemporary, you're going to think of the skill work. It might actually be challenging floor work, you know, being inverted, being on your forearms, being contorted, being in a unique shape on the floor, having to hold a plank for a long period of time with one arm off to the side or a leg in the air, your head cockeyed. It could be contracted or unique shapes in the air. Like it is a leap in second, but you did it in double attitude, sustain, or your hands were like twisted, or your head went pop in the middle of it. It could be a unique shape in your pirouette. Maybe your pirouette's on your knee. Maybe you were on the ground, you stood into your pirouette, and then you torqued yourself into a sauté that is off center. So really stretching the exploration of like new ways, discovering new ways to move our bodies in space and time.
Great. So again, one quick wrap up, and then Michelle's going to talk a little bit about the history of those genres. It won't be a snooze fest by any means, but it will help you think of those key words again. It'll reinforce it all. So jazz, you're thinking stylized, rhythmic. For lyrical, you're thinking the lyrics of the piece and fluid. And then for contemporary, you're thinking new, fresh, modern. And those are some key phrases and words to be thinking of. So Michelle, now I'm going to throw it again to you to talk a little bit about the history of the categories.
Yes, and first I do want to show two little snippets of video, and we are watching for a good word to think about contemporary might be pedestrian, because again, there are some purists that might suggest, okay, we're influenced by what we know from modern or ballet or jazz. We are influenced by understanding how to place our bodies and how to do these movements well, but we're going to do them so differently. So you might see contracted movement. The way you hold your body, even when you're walking, it's going to look different to you here on this video than it did in the lyrical, certainly. And you might have flex feet instead of pointed feet. You might have pronated legs. What? Gross. But it works for contemporary because it's a unique way of holding your body.
So as she's pulling that up, hopefully this will help you. Just those key phrases. Think about what category your dance falls under, really thinking about that and thinking about those key words.
Do you not see it?
I don't see it yet.
Oh, I've been playing it.
Hmm.
Interesting. Okay. I see my face. I see my face again. I see share screen.
Good. Yay. There you go. It's starting. Oh, I see somebody else sharing screen. Oh, there you go. You're on.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
So that is new and unique.
All they're doing is walking, but they were contracted and they were using same arm as leg instead of opposition. Flex foot, leverage, arch, contract. Duck under someone's leg, hit it with your head so it moves out of the way. How else can we use our body? I'm showing you this because it's slow. Watch this. What should we do this part in the music? Let's rub on her costume with the back of our hand. A lot of times in contemporary, you see people touch each other in ways they might not normally, or actually even touch each other that isn't traditional partnering, like just touching someone's shoulder and turning them to the side. I like the spiral, the arch, the contraction is very foundation based with modern, those coccyx balances. Touching your leg as you go to plie, then arching back, but not extending the leg up. But you can see that they have extension and placement and technique. Obviously, without good training, they wouldn't be able to execute this in a believable fashion. All right. And then the other one I wanted to show you is it's a happy contemporary. It has energy and life. It's very light. This piece was really heavy and like rounded more so, and this is much more light. Just walking pedestrian fashion, flex feet. Touching your partner's face. Unique arm placements in space. Kind of like when you're trying to do a palm routine and they ask you to stay away from high V, low VT every single move. This is kind of the same idea. Watch this floor work here. So just really unique way going onto the side of their shin and then doing not really a cartwheel, but it is a cartwheel. Really nice spiral contraction. Lots of hand and wrist isolations. So there's definitely a rhythmic intent with both the lyric and the backbeat. It goes really with this piece of music and not something else. So I like the change of that from the other piece because they're both contemporary and they both display a lot of the same kinds of movement actually, but totally different approach and a different way of expressing as well.
So now, segue, I forgot to do the videos, full confession on that last one. So go ahead and talk about just the history of each of the genres just a little bit, and we won't be long.
No, certainly not. So lyrical became kind of popular in the 1980s when jazz started in the 50s, 60s. Well, jazz started at the turn of the century. We won't go too much into jazz history, but we're talking about really where did lyrical evolve from and how did it become its own category. So kind of the jazz dancers and classical ballet dancers kind of tired of just like that same like pigeonhole, like this is what we do, this is what we do, this is what we do. And it has to be like this and this and this, especially the classical ballet dancers. Now the jazz dancers were able to express themselves with emotional impact and entertainment value, and they could take highs and lows and anger and strong and happy, and it didn't matter because it was all jazz. It was very entertaining. But a lot of the classical ballet dancers of the time never got to really explore new ways of moving their bodies and using their technique, but being maybe more fluid or more in lines with the lyric versus just kind of that classical pattern. You know, I do it to the right, I do it to the left, I do it to the right, and then you do a variation of it. And it doesn't even matter what piece of classical music it is, it's going to be a similar structure to that. So to explore more opportunity, I think a lot of the professionals in the industry started playing around with music that they just love to listen to. And people were like, hey, that's kind of neat. I like that. And it became its own style of dance that we call lyrical because it is you emulating the intonations of the lyric and the vocal specifically. So it is more sustained movement than jazz. It tends to be slower. The definition for jazz for ISDTA does have tempo, up tempo in the definition. So that does really help you decide kind of right away that balance between what is it exactly that I'm doing. If you want to think of it as being more slow, but more rich and more sustained, and we use the word fluid, I believe, in the definition. And it for sure is going to have potentially a more emotional impact. It doesn't mean that it's angsty, and it doesn't mean that it's constipated. So we see this so much. Everyone thinks they're doing lyrical, and they're like, oh! And I just think, no, that doesn't have to be lyrical. Lyrical can be like, I'm so in love, and I feel pretty. And it can be something that's a lot more light and joyful and upward. And it doesn't have to be, you know, like heavy and rich to have an emotional impact. So that's one thing I hope that you can take away from this based on the history of the lyrical. It's a way of expressing yourself, but doesn't equal sad or depressed movement or face. And then contemporary, Mary hit on this right on the head when she was talking about, you know, what does contemporary mean? It's just like a fancy way of saying it's modern or it's current. So if you know anything about your dance history, you know, those modern pioneers were kind of thumbing their noses at the ballet community because the ballet community was performing to people who had a lot of money and they had a codified method and it has to be like this. And first we do bar, we do plie, then we do tendu, then we do dégagé, and it's going to go like this. And anywhere you ever go, it's just like that. And it's perfect and it has to be turned out. And everyone in the arts community that just wanted to express themselves more freely were like, no, I can just walk across the stage and hold a vase and that is dancing. And so that's kind of how modern started, was we're not going to be codified like you, and we're not going to be turned out, we're going to be turned in. We're going to walk with flexed feet, we're going to bend over, we're going to tell a story maybe. And it did not have a codified technique for years. Well, then here come the modern pioneers, and guess what they did? They codified their technique, like Martha Graham and Lester Horton and all of the great modern dance pioneers. So come the 1990s, people are getting a little tired of lyrical, and they're using their modern dance knowledge and roots, and they realize they're coming up with a new way of moving. They've discovered a new way to place their body in space, and I don't have a vocabulary and I don't have a term, and I'm contemporary. So everyone started using that word contemporary, and I don't know if everyone used it for the same thing or for the right thing, but I think that the way it's defined for ISDTA is perfect for dance teams right now where they can kind of understand, I have to know these other dance forms a little so that I understand my body and how to move it in space, but I get to explore a unique shape or a unique method or a new approach. It's contemporary.
Good stuff. Thanks, Michelle. So now it's your turn to ask us questions as well. We do have about 7 seed questions here, but what we'd love for you to do is to raise your hand or shout out. Don't worry about interrupting us and ask your question. I'll go ahead and start with question 1 though, and then we'll move forward. So the very first question that was given to us was, how do you know which category your dance falls under? Well, hopefully, Michelle and I have explained things very well for you. Just remember to really look at your definitions. Every definition, no matter what competition you go to, that is your rubric. That is your key. That is your legend, like a map, as to what you should create. So really look at the definitions that your association has put together for you and find those key words just like we did, because that's what the judges are looking for. That's what they're coming in to judge on. So I'm allowing some space in case anybody wants to unmute and ask a question.
Hey, Mary,
yes.
Hey, just to elaborate on that, for those of you that are new to ISDTA, maybe on this call or listening to the recorded version, all of our category definitions, but it is, it's also online at isdta.net under competition resources. The new handbook is out there. So go take a look and share that with your choreographers as well. That's really important. I will mute now.
I cannot share that enough about giving it to your choreographers, because they really want to do the best for you. Make sure that they know the keywords and really talk to them about it. I'm going to go to the second C question, and then y'all again, just raise your hand or unmute. What is the difference between the jazz category and the lyrical category? And this person also said that they've seen so many lyrical-ish type of dances entered under jazz. And how do I know where a dance will compete better? And the answer is, I love how Michelle said it to me when we were talking, the same as number 1. Look at your definition. Really think about lyrical and what that emotion is trying to be, what the story is. Remember that it can be up-tempo and lyrical, so it can cross over a little bit, but it's the how. How are they conveying that to me? How are they moving? Is it fluid? That type of thing. That's really, really important. Where I'm going to switch to contemporary very quickly. Contemporary is not really attached to the story of the song. It can be, but it doesn't have to be attached to it. The story kind of becomes secondary sometimes in contemporary, and the movement quality and the musicality kind of move to the forefront on that. So there are some a little bit slower sections in a jazz routine, but again, we are also looking at the preparation of the turns, and we're looking at the how and how they're interpreting the music for lyrical.
Looks like Mary Ann raised her hand, so I am going to go ahead and unmute her and let her ask the question.
I didn't hear the question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jay.
Hey, Mary, are you there?
Hey, Jay. Yes, I can hear you.
I'm Michelle.
Hello.
I'm sitting here with Mary Ann too. And one thing I noted after the first question you asked was, if you're a coach and you're not quite sure what category your routine would go in, our community here in Iowa is so helpful. And there are so many coaches or board members that if you're wondering and questioning, I guess my suggestion would be reach out to a couple of those coaches or choreographers and say, can I send you a video of my routine, or will you come look at my routine and maybe give me your input on what you think? Because there are so many knowledgeable people here that would be able to look at your routine and go, oh, that for sure is jazz, or that for sure is contemporary. So don't be afraid to reach out, because everyone is so helpful here.
That's such a great point, Jay. I'm really glad that you made that. And that was actually a question later on talking about resources. You know, what resources do we have? And that is the best one. Typically, even at the collegiate level, coaches will send them to different people just to get an input and ideas. So feel free to reach out and ask people, because they are helpful. Does anybody else want to raise their hand like Jay did? That was cute. So I'm
Marianne,
gonna
maybe do it. Marianne said, raise your hand, raise your hand.
Thank you, Marianne.
And so, as the good husband I am, I did.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And hi, everyone else who's watching.
Yeah, this is Kathy.
Hey, Kathy.
Hey, the thing people need to remember, though, at this competition, focus on that style. Don't try to combine jazz and lyrical and contemporary. You've got to focus on what our guidelines are.
Yep.
Another competition might say you need 3 styles within a routine. We do not. So make sure you're not combining styles within the routines for state competition.
Right. Great point. So I'm going to go to another question that was submitted earlier, and then we'll throw it back to y'all to see if anybody else has another question. So the third question is, what are the specific techniques? What are the specific skills that belong to each category? For instance, is one leap more appropriate for jazz than lyrical, than contemporary? So Michelle, I'm going to toss you that ball.
Yes, I mentioned earlier, instead of thinking not what the skills are, thinking more how they are. I think whenever I'm choreographing or moving and I have this urge musically to take air, I just kind of I just do it, or I might put a leap in there or some sort of saute. And then when I'm watching them rehearse that section, I try to think, I try to step back whenever I can to really remove myself from my heart that's part of the choreography and just look at it as it is structured and think, well, is that leap the kind of leap you would do in this kind of moment? Like, I think it's okay to take air there. I was inspired to do that at that time. I hear it in the music. I feel the sense of energy there. It belongs there. But did I do it in the right way? Like, was it 2 straight parallel fourth, or should it be double attitude with a curved arm? So sometimes you have to, it's okay to have these things in there, no matter what the genre is, but go back. It doesn't have to be right then that you think, well, we're going to do it just like this. Maybe you go back and reevaluate all of the piece. You know, are we too parallel certain times, or are we too turned out a lot of this jazz piece? Is it, you know, look at the stylization, not even just the skills, but the technique of it, the quality of movement that is being presented, to see if it matches all the way through, that you didn't start out with this great moment, this great idea, and then it suddenly evolved into something else. Like what Kathy mentioned, sometimes things kind of change their vibe a little bit as you choreograph and get a little deeper into it. So I think going back even after it is okay, if you don't conceive of those things right away. Or conversely, sometimes if I'm feeling a little dry, I've got some kids that they're not super talented, like perfect dancers, but they're very creative and they're not afraid to just move. And sometimes I'll have them, you know, come up with a new way to do a turn, or a new way to do a leap, or put, you know, what kind of shape can you be in that everyone can do just a single pirouette. And sometimes I will pull from them this weird upside down, weird looking shape. And that's part of the rotation that comes as we're standing off the ground in our contemporary piece, because I was just feeling a little fried. So just like Jay was saying, ask other people for help if you're not sure what category you go into. I think it's okay to you know, grab your officers, or just have one of those days where you're like, let's put on video some unique things, or some really thoughtful things that we could maybe apply to our piece in the future.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Does anybody want to raise their hand, ask a question? Well, I'm going to go to the next question then. Question number 4 of 7 is, this person wrote in, I look forward to learning how to hit the scorecard specifically for each category. Well, what's interesting is if you think about how the score sheet's broken out, choreography is a nice chunk of it. And that is the one thing besides the costume that those dancers are given before they enter the floor. Everything else is how a child from 14 to 18 is going to do in that specific moment in time. So the choreography, for sure, read through those definitions, really feel that, make sure that they feel confident about the piece, because we are right there. We can see them. We can see that eye contact, and that was actually a question that's coming up in a minute about emotion. We'll talk about that, but really be thinking about the choreography and making sure it hits that definition from ISDTA. And then you also want to think about everything that you know, which is seamless transitions, and that it's not stagnant whenever people are moving. So in other words, don't make it to where it's a combination and then we move, and then another combination, and then we move. Really try to think about making that whole piece be fluid and seamless. So you're thinking of telling the piece in the lyrical, you're thinking of being rhythmic and stylized in the jazz, and then in the contemporary, you're thinking fresh and new. So all that goes under the choreography. Then you've got to do the technique underneath it, and then as well also the execution of it. And then on projection, boy, we're both gonna talk about that. I'm gonna say something and then toss the ball over to you, Michelle. It's very important that you don't just say in a piece, we're not smiling. Give them an emotion, give them a word that they're thinking about, and have them practice that and have them know what it means. They may not know how to feel angst at 13. They just may not know. So practice making sure that it's a word they can relate to. And so, Michelle, anything you want to talk about projection or energy specifically?
Yes. I believe it comes from not just your face.
Yes.
I believe that, and my own dancers are very guilty of this. So a lot of times I blame them for dancing from the neck down. So we see it a lot in competition. You've worked so hard on cleanliness and training and foundation and knowing that choreography and executing it perfectly. And then all they're doing is dancing from the neck down because that's all they've been thinking about the whole time. And there's nothing going on upstairs. So they need to make eye contact. They need to use their eyebrows, their cheeks. They need to maybe part their lips a little and take an intake of breath if they have to. And maybe some breathing is part of that, because sometimes they just hold their breath and they don't remember to exhale. So I don't think an audible exhale or breath is necessary for all pieces. So I don't want you to think that as well. I think that's kind of a choice in choreography maybe, or a choice in execution. But I think that if their presentation is live and they're in the moment and it's not choreographed to go, oh, ha, or ooh, at any given moment, and they're actually just truly really feeling those emotions, I think that's important. Mary had said something on our little, we'd had a little powwow before this about just almost like acting, like teaching them their emotions, like anger, despair, fear, joy, love, just anything that you can use as an adjective, and then have them do it with their face. So just sitting still, and then they can't move anything but their face. I wanted to bring up someone, Morgan Freeman, one of my favorite actors. He is so gifted in only moving a few muscles on his face, and you immediately know what he's trying to convey. He was in Shawshank Redemption, and there was a whole gambit of emotions in that movie all into one. He played God in a movie. He was a detective in a movie that was about a serial killer. Like, and he never says hardly anything, and yet you know exactly what he's saying. He didn't have to say it. And so I think that's important to remember when we're dancing or when we're teaching young students is it doesn't have to be overdone on the face. It just has to be done. And when it's easy to understand, like a smile or a sense of full, bright energy, that's easy to slap on and go with it. But those other things I think really do need to be practiced, just like you practice your other moves, so they become believable. And it doesn't become the choreographer choosing a piece and it's about this and it means something really important to me, and then none of the kids understand and they don't relate and they can't connect. So how can they connect? We can sit down and have these feeling kind of exercises.
And so I'll give really one quick example of that. A lot of times in professional auditions, they just have people walk across the floor. So an easy thing for you to do is say, all right, I'm going to give you this word and I want you to walk with this word, confident. And then you have them walk and express the word confident. And now I'm going to give you another word and they walk with this word, defeated. And then you give them the word determined. So that's just a way to have them think and practice that, and then that'll develop. And it can be fun. It doesn't have to be harsh words, but it can also be fun words. Well, this is our last seed question, and then I'll be depending on y'all to raise your hand or to ask out, shout out. What is the most common misconception that you have seen related to teams competing in contemporary? Michelle, I know you have very definite thoughts on this, so I'm going to toss you the ball first.
Yes, that it has to have a story or theme, or that it must be angst-ridden in its mood.
Yes, exactly. So it can be definitely, like Michelle said, it doesn't have to be so heavy, because sometimes when we're looking, that young lady upstage in that back row at 13, she may not get it fully. And my eye is going to go to her. So that's just something for you to consider. That's kind of a common misconception. And also remember that some teams choose to use a piece that just has words in it, and that's fine too. So go ahead and just explore different things. You don't have to think it has to be so heavy in contemporary. Well, now that's it for the seed questions. So now we're going to turn it over to y'all. Y'all have anything you'd like to ask us? Well, all right. If so, I am sure that Andrea and them can forward those questions on. We just want to again say, and I'll let Michelle do her wrap up after this, but we just wanted to say thank you for having us. It's an honor to be on the inaugural Zoom call. This is such a great forum, and just looking forward and excited to see what else ISDTA is going to come forward with. Michelle, I'll toss it to you very quickly to give your wrap up.
Thanks, Mary. I ditto everything she says. I miss being in Iowa so much. It breaks my heart every year that Nutcracker has fallen on that date. I came upon it as an accident, and I was only going to do it 1 year, and now it's always the same weekend. Unfortunately, I watched talent grow and develop in Iowa over the course of 10 or 11 years that I was there regularly. And I think it's so exciting how many of you are on the call and that you want to know more and that you're interested to hear what's being said. Follow those guidelines of the definition. They're very different from each other. Even though they bleed out kind of the same red blood, they do march to the beat of a different drum.
Well, thanks again, Andrea and Alyssa. We're tossing the ball to y'all. Thank you again for having us.
Oh, Mary and Michelle, thank you so much. I know not if everybody unmuted right now, it would be a hot mess and it would sound really bad. But thank you so much. I know you did a lot of preparation for this. Love the videos. And I'll tell you what, my favorite part were these last tidbits of information and history and things to think about and practice. This is going to be very valuable for us as we enter into the preparation for state solos and state team. And a lot of teams are already in that preparation mode and have been for a while. So Thank you so much. And this is recorded. We will be sharing this on our Facebook page, and I'll be emailing it out as well. So Mary and Michelle, thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. And everybody that's on the call, thank you so much for joining. I hope this was valuable. Feel free to shoot me an email with any feedback and thoughts for future. Everybody enjoy their evenings. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.